Hey there everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today I wanted to talk about a game series that is near and dear to my heart, and that is Castlevania. Now, for those of you unaware, right now on Epic Games Store, Castlevania is free, at least the first 4 games and a couple bonus games, like Castlevania 2 for Game Boy, and it's in the Castlevania Anniversary Collection, which I already had on Steam, but now I have it on Epic Games, and it's free. So if you're watching this video when it comes out, go ahead and go over to Epic Games, download it. I really recommend it. Castlevania 1 came out in September 26th of 1986, and it changed gaming pretty much as a whole for the Nintendo period of gaming back in the 80s. And it genuinely is one of the most fun experiences that I had playing regular Nintendo as a child. And then Castlevania 2 was actually, Simon's Quest was actually my first Castlevania game that I played on Nintendo before Castlevania 1, because I was born in the 90s, not the 80s. And Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest, was considered to be the worst, and so I got it at a yard sale for $5. Now, for reference, back then in the 90s, $5 is literally nothing. So I paid, my parents paid literally nothing for this game. And Castlevania, I actually had a lot of fun with it, despite the fact that it had its problems. It's terrible not to have a curse, and the fact that you had to talk to pretty much every single NPC in every single town just to know what the hell to do, but also the fact that the towns, if it was nighttime, you couldn't talk to anyone and monsters were trying to kill you, which is good because you needed a lot of hearts to buy the items you needed, and each monster dropped 1 heart individually, and most items were 100 to 200 hearts. So you did a lot of grinding. People think you grind in MMOs. You grinded in Simon's Quest. Perhaps that is where my love for games like EverQuest and World of Warcraft came from as a child. I was just used to the grind from the start. But then I played Castlevania 1 and then Castlevania 3, which came out in December 22nd of 1989. And then it wasn't until years later as a teenager that I actually played Super Castlevania 4, and it came out October 31st on Halloween of 1991, 5 years after the original. And Super Castlevania 4 is a remake of the first game that came out on the Nintendo console for the Super Nintendo. And let me just say, this is by far the best version of Castlevania in the retro style that you can play. If you don't want to play Symphony of the Night, because in my mind, Symphony of the Night is a peak Castlevania game. It is honestly amazing, but Super Castlevania 4 is really the bread and butter, the meat and potatoes of Castlevania, because it's not this RPG, side-scroller, platformer that, Metroidvania, where that term comes from is actually Castlevania and Metroidvania. It comes from Symphony of the Night, and this isn't exactly what the root of Castlevania was. I think if you want to play the peak of Castlevania games, you should get the free Epic Games Castlevania Anniversary Collection, and you should play Super Castlevania 4 specifically. I'd recommend playing the first 3 that came out on Super Nintendo, on the regular Nintendo, just so you can appreciate Super Castlevania 4 a little bit more. But after playing Castlevania 4, you will never want to go back to playing the original NES titles. Now, I go back and play Simon's Quest out of nostalgia sometimes, but I cannot argue that Super Castlevania 4, particularly in this collection, is peak Castlevania gameplay. From the music, to the sound effects, to the control of your whip being omnidirectional. You heard me. 8-way directional whipping, which is just, that's a bit kinky. But otherwise, honestly, everything is great. You can move while midair when you jump, so the platforming feels really well. It feels really good. It's really well done. The music, just phenomenal. Castlevania has some of the best soundtracks. In fact, if you're watching this video, the background music is from the soundtrack of Castlevania. Whether it's a rendition or a cover, will be decided upon the video. However, I know for a fact any Castlevania music I use is going to be a banger, because they really step it up in that department. Even on the classic NES, it's some of the best. You really just start banging your head to this music, and you don't even realize you're doing it until you're halfway through a play session. You're like, oh, wait, I'm actually, vibing really hard with this music. The level design is actually really well made, especially for the NES, the first 3 games, Castlevania 1, 2, and 3. The level design is actually really well done for early NES days. But I think Super Castlevania 4, I think it's where they perfected the level design. I think it's when it was at its peak, at its best. And so I can't really glaze this game enough. It genuinely, Super Castlevania 4 is amazing. And Castlevania as a whole is a series that's near and dear to my heart. And I think one day on the channel, I think I do plan on playing through the Lords of Shadow games, which are the more modern versions. I do plan on playing all of Super Castlevania 4 at some point, although the game does get pretty difficult about halfway through. So that's probably going to take like a year to get that video out. And sorry. Got something in my throat. It's nostalgia. But honestly, the series is near and dear to my heart, and I plan on playing a lot of the games through completion and uploading it onto the channel. So if you want to see more of that, please stay tuned. But honestly, go pick up the collection right now. You're not going to regret it. All of these games are absolutely top of the line for their generation. So Castlevania, out of all the NES games, Castlevania 1, 2, and 3, they may have their flaws when looking back on them now, but at the time, if you consider the fact this is an NES game, they are peak NES games. There's not much that compares in the 86 to 89 era of NES. There is nothing that compares to Castlevania. And Super Castlevania 4, I recommend getting this collection just for Super Castlevania 4. If that's the only game you play that one. I 100% guarantee this holds up today, even with modern standards. This game holds up. I guarantee you're gonna love it just as much as I love it. So that's kind of my this is kind of my public service announcement to go get this game while it's free, because this collection while it's free, because these games are absolutely fucking astonishing. So thanks for watching the video. I'll see you guys the next time. Peace.